Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome to this session of Behind the Practice. I'm Gen Drummond. I'm the CEO of Hummingbird Clinical Consulting and a proud Jane ambassador. And today we're diving into our session called Scale with Simplicity, the Jane Powered Blueprint. So this session is really exciting because I'm going to show you how to streamline your systems, empower your team, and create a practice that grows with ease without adding more chaos to your day. So we'll be walking through some practical steps, real examples, and Jane features you can put to work right away so you can focus less on the admin and more on what really matters, which is caring for your patients and leading with clarity. So again, this is me. I am such a proud Jane ambassador. I've been on Jane since 2018 in so many capacities, but I've spent my career helping healthcare providers streamline their operations and strengthen their teams, as well as build practices that are both profitable and purpose-driven. So before launching Hummingbird, I was a practicing nutritionist and I ran a multi-disciplinary practice in Canada. And that experience really shaped my passion for healthcare systems and values-based leadership. I would go on to sell that practice and form my own consulting agency where now I support clinics across North America. And so I create tools, courses, and consulting frameworks that really empower providers to simplify their systems and scale with confidence. And so my work is really rooted in just one belief that when clinics run smoothly, providers get to really focus on what really matters. And that's delivering meaningful care and building the kind of practices that they originally dreamed of. Okay, so today's session, we're going to be walking through why we're here. So we'll start by grounding ourselves in the purpose of this session, which is simplifying practice growth so you can scale without adding more stress. And then next, I'll show you how Jane functions as your digital headquarters and really acts as the central place to manage everything from scheduling to charting to payments. And then finally, we'll do the blueprint, practice blueprint. So we'll walk through the Jane powered blueprint. And this is really my step-by-step framework you can use to streamline workflows and empower your team. We will look at some results and then wrap up with a mini practice analysis to help you identify your own opportunities for simplifying and scaling with ease. All right, so why are we here today? So that's the biggest question. Why are we here today? This session is really for anybody that is feeling buried in admin tasks or constantly trying to keep up with the day-to-day. You might be feeling like you want to grow your practice, but you don't want that growth to come at the cost of your patient care. Or maybe you're just looking for ways to make things run smoother so growth actually feels sustainable. So, as you're listening to me, if you nodded your head yes to any of those, just know that you're absolutely in the right place. My goal today is to show you that scaling really doesn't have to be complicated. It can actually be quite simple, and it can give you space to focus on the parts of your practice that you love the most. All right, so Jane as your digital headquarters. This is a little bit about my story. So when I think back about what allowed our practice to grow without burning us out, Jane was really at the center of my entire story. It really did become our digital headquarters, and it was the place where everything lived, essentially, from scheduling to charting to payments. And so with Jane, we were able to scale our practice to 7 providers without adding extra day-to-day chaos. We opened another location while still staying really connected as a team. We were also able to increase revenue, and this part I'll talk about more later, but We did this not by working harder or longer, so longer hours. We did it by improving efficiency and keeping patient retention really high. The next best thing was being able to build a values driven culture because when our administrative and our clinical team were taken care of, we were able to focus on our practice growth. And ultimately, that's where Hummingbird was born. It was really born from my passion for helping other practices experience that same type of transformation. So when I talk about Jane as your digital headquarters, it's really not a feature list. It's about how it actually supports real growth for your businesses. All right, the Jane powered practice blueprint. So, when it comes to simplifying your practice, I like to think of it essentially as a blueprint. So, for this one, there's 4 steps and they really do build upon each other. So, step 1 is to streamline and centralize. The first step is really bringing everything into one place. So, if you look at your practice right now, instead of juggling multiple tools, Jane allows you to centralize pretty much everything. So scheduling, charting, billing, and communication. So nothing falls through the cracks and no patients are missed, which is, a big deal with practices. And then step 2 is to systemize and delegate. So next, we create systems. So when workflows are clearly mapped out, it's really easy to delegate or automate. So whether that's to your team or to tools inside Jane, you can automate repetitive tasks once you've mapped that out. And then step 3 is to measure what matters. So once your systems are in place, you can start tracking the metrics that truly drive your practice forward. So things like retention, patient flow, and even revenue per provider. So Jane, in my opinion, makes it really easy to see what's working and what's not. And then step 4 is to scale with intention. So this is the fun part that everybody wants. Everyone wants growth, but you want growth without the chaos. So I often speak about just setting that foundation for success first. When your foundation is firm, when you've streamlined your systems and the right numbers are guiding you, you can expand your business intentionally. So what do I mean by that? You can expand by providers, locations, service lines, and in a way that feels sustainable and authentic to your mission. And this is essentially the Jane powered blueprint. It's really simple. You create repeatable systems, and it's designed to help you scale your business with ease. All right, so we're going to dig in. So step 1, streamline and centralize. So this is really the first step in simplifying your practice and bringing everything into one roof. So this is what I mean by using Jane as your digital headquarters. Instead of logging into 3 or 4 different systems, let's say you're using one for booking, another one for billing, or you're doing charting outside of your EMR, Jane really helps to keep everything together, which is so, so important. So for example, when a patient books an appointment online, Jane will automatically reserve the time in your schedule, sends them a confirmation email, and then updates your day sheet. Or when you chart after a session, Jane can pull forward treatment notes or exercises you've already assigned using features such as phrases. And this saves you time from having to start fresh every single session. You can also do things like shared post-visit instructions in a templated form. And that can be shared to your clients to help improve engagement and patient retention. And when you process a payment, it instantly ties to the patient's invoice and account, so you're not having to toggle between a POS system and your EMR. So I love to talk about automation because there's so much power in automation. So when I work with practices that are still either working on paper or they're calling every client before they're coming in, the power of automation is so huge here. So think of reminders going out without even having to lift a finger. So this works to reduce no-shows, and it gives patients a smoother experience. The other automation that I love to talk about is your online intake forms that flow directly into the chart. So this really does help to eliminate the stack of paperwork at the front desk or the backlog of wait times in your waiting room or in the actual consult room as your clinicians are having sessions with clients that may not have even filled out their intake form. And then one of the biggest wins I like to talk about when we streamline and centralize is greatly eliminating that double entry. So if you're a practice that has, potentially a contact form, or you're scribbling down new patient information, you're constantly having to put stuff in your EMR or your clinical management software, this is great because the patient can really book online, upload all their information, and then the intake form is automatically sent. So it really does create a very streamlined process for both the practice and the client. And I often say when you centralize in this way, you're really saving time. And again, you're creating that foundation where your team can work with clarity and patients really feel like their care is seamless. All right, step 2, systemize and delegate. So once you've gone through and created everything in a central place, the next thing is to systemize and delegate. That starts with SOPs, or standard operating procedures. So using Jane, you can build repeatable processes right into your workflows. For example, how patients are onboarded, how billing is handled, or how cancellations are managed. When those specific steps are documented and consistent, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time, which is so important. And then the next part of this is delegation. So I often say, not everything on your plate needs to stay there, or not everything in your brain has to stay in your brain. This is where things like virtual assistants, like a team at Ginger Desk, can really step in and serve your practice. They can take care of things like admin tasks, such as appointment scheduling, follow-ups, or claims submissions. And it's all supported by Jane's centralized system. And when you systemize and delegate, you finally get to focus on your zone of genius, or your team's zone of genius. And it gets you back to doing what you and your team love, which is providing care or leading your team and really shaping the future of your practice. So systemizing and delegating isn't just about efficiency. It's really about giving you your time and your energy back so you can then invest it where it matters the most. And then step 3 is measure what matters. So at this stage, it's not just about running your practice, it's really about understanding it. So with Jane Reports, you have access to numbers that are actually going to move the needle forward for you. So things like patient retention, revenue trends, billing accuracy, or even how often patients are canceling and rebooking, and as far as doing reports for provider or schedule utilization. So it's really, really helpful to measure if the changes that you're making in your practice or your marketing efforts are really working. And this kind of visibility in your practice allows you to make data-driven business decisions instead of just operating on gut feeling or, what you think may be working. So, for example, if you see a dip in rebooking rates, you know that it may be time to revisit follow-up protocols. Or if you look at one service line and you have one that's outperforming others, maybe you would shift your marketing spend more strategically for that. So when you have this level of visibility in your practice, it creates clarity and confidence, not just for you as the owner, but for your whole team. And that's really important because everyone knows where the practice stands, and you can plan your growth with intention instead of just guessing. So the goal here isn't to measure, every single metric. It's to measure the right things that matter most for you right now. And the things that show you if your practice is truly healthy and scalable. All right, step 4, everybody's favorite step. So scale without burning out. So I say this often, but I'm going to say it again because scaling or growth is only possible once you have the foundation in place. So once you've streamlined, you've systemized, and learned to measure what matters, growth really doesn't have to equal chaos. So with repeatable systems, you're not reinventing the wheel every time you add a new provider, expand services, or even open up another location. The structure itself that you've built allows your practice to grow smoothly. Jane's features also support scaling intentionally. So things like memberships or packages that encourage long-term retention and predictable revenue, or features like buffers and cancellation settings. So that helps to protect your schedule as well, so growth doesn't then also become overwhelming for your business. So, but here's the takeaway. Here's the key point is that when you do the work up front, when that growth comes, it will feel sustainable for you. So scaling doesn't have to mean more stress. It can mean more impact, more financial freedom, or more focus to care for your practice members. So whether you're growing in locations, service lines, team members, whatever it may be, the magic is really in Jane. So it doesn't mean that you automatically have to see more patients to directly experience growth. So there's a lot of flexibility here. Alrighty. We're going to talk a little bit about workflow mapping. So to bring this all together, workflow mapping essentially allows you to visualize the client or patient experience on both the administrative and clinical side of your business. So you're going to want to start by mapping out what is actually happening today, not the ideal version you may have, for what you want the process to be, but what it is right now. So you're going to walk through each step of that patient journey. So you're going to look at, initial inquiry, booking, their intake process, your recommendations of care treatment plans, all the way through charting and billing, and what that follow-up looks like for that patient base. And I recommend that you involve your team. So everybody from, your front desk to your clinicians or providers, even your billers, so you can capture all the small details that exist in that workflow. You can make it super easy and use a shared Google Doc. If you're doing it in person and you want to use sticky notes or a flow chart, the idea here is that you're really looking for bottlenecks and opportunities to increase efficiency. So an example here would be to look at the conversion rate from initial inquiry to booking, or your retention from your recommendation of care to the first series of appointments booked until a milestone appointment. So it's really important here to map out the entire process because it's going to help you see those opportunities for improving efficiency. And it really helps to see those redundancies or where those gaps are hiding. So step 2 is to analyze for efficiency and opportunities. So once this workflow is on paper or in a shared Google Doc, you're going to look at it critically and you're going to ask yourself a couple questions. You're going to get the replay of this, so don't feel like you need to write down all these questions now. But the first question you're going to ask yourself is, where are tasks being duplicated or repeated? So once it's all laid out, you're going to easily be able to see if people are doing things repeatedly or if there's multiple team members doing things at the same time. So where are tasks being duplicated or repeated? The next question you're going to ask yourself is, what steps are creating delays, confusion, or frustration for both your team and your patients? So this is a really important question. And often what I'll see here is, long wait times, or confusion about when they're supposed to be back. So, and not having clear recommendations of care. Those are two really common ones. Next, you're going to ask yourself what steps are being missed, and are there patterns in drop off rates in care, or are there patterns in rebooking rates? And then which steps could be automated, delegated, or simplified using tools like Jane or a VA service. So this stage is really about diagnosing the leaks in your system before, rushing to just fix them. And then step 3 is redesign and implement the optimized workflow. So now you're going to be building your improved version. The first step is you're going to want to remove any unnecessary or duplicated steps in that workflow. And you're going to want to standardize tasks with standard operating procedures so that the process is clear and repeatable every single time. Next, you're going to want to integrate automation where possible. So, tools and features like online booking, automated reminders, and direct to chart intake forms. And then lastly, you will want to assign clear roles within your team based on strengths, or what I like to call zones of genius. And then finally, you will roll it out with your team, test the new workflow, and then refine as you go. And so, really, the bottom line here is that workflow mapping itself is a cycle, and you want to document the as is and identify what's slowing you down, then redesign for simplicity and clarity. You're going to want to repeat this regularly because as your practice grows, your workflow needs may evolve as well. Alrighty, next we're going to talk about some results. So I wanted to give you some examples of practices that we've worked with that have followed this blueprint. So one clinic we worked with saw a 40% reduction in admin time, which meant the front desk could finally focus more on patient experience instead of paperwork. Which was great. I love that practice. And then another clinic we worked with was able to achieve a revenue increase while working fewer hours. So this happened largely by diversifying their service lines and offerings. And this really just does prove that growth doesn't have to come from, longer days or just trying to see more patients yourself. And then finally, probably one of my most favorite examples here is we worked with a practice owner that hadn't taken a vacation, a true vacation, in over 5 years. And so they were able to take a 2-week holiday without shutting down their practice. So their systems and their team were strong enough to keep things running even when they did step away. And so these examples, these results are really not outliers. They're just great examples of what's possible when you have the right systems in place. Alrighty, so next we're going to move on to our mini practice analysis. So if you have a pen and paper or the notes app on your phone just to keep score. So you're going to give yourself 1 point if you answer A, 2 points if you answer B, and 3 points if you answer C. And so I will read the question as well and give you a little bit of time to answer. And then at the end of the analysis, I will also walk you through the results key and where you land in each bucket based on the total score that you received. So the first question is, how does your team currently manage patient scheduling and reminders? So A is manual, phone, email, or no reminders. B would be a hybrid system, so some automation. And C, Jane handles booking and reminders. And now, question 2, what system do you use for documentation and charting? So, A is paper based or multiple tools. B is EMR not integrated with other systems. And C, fully digital using Jane. Question 3, how are billing and payments handled at your clinic? So A is invoicing is done manually. B, you have a mix of manual and automated tools. And C, payments are fully automated through Jane. And now moving on to question 4, how do you currently track provider performance or service profitability? So A, you are currently not tracking it. B, you're using spreadsheets or basic EMR reports. Or C, you are using Jane's reporting and dashboard. Now, moving on to question number 5. What systems do you have in place for no show and cancellation prevention? So, A, you have no formal process in place. B, you have manual tracking or it's a reactive process. Or C, you use Jane's automations and cancellation buffers. Next is question 6. How do you handle intake forms and patient onboarding? A is paper forms or PDFs. B would be your EMR, but with limited functionality. And C is fully digital and integrated via Jane. All right, and next is question 7. How clearly defined are your clinic's administrative workflows? So, A, you have no SOPs or inconsistent processes. B, basic documentation exists. And C, SOPs are managed and followed using Jane's platform. And moving on to question 8, do you use service packages, memberships, or bundling options? A, we don't use these. B, we're exploring options. And C, we use Jane to offer packages and memberships. Question 9, how are tasks delegated and communicated across your team? A, there are no defined roles or delegation. B is verbal delegation only. And C, delegation via Jane's tasks or template features, and are leveraging a virtual assistant or in house staff. And then question 10, how prepared is your clinic to function without your day to day involvement? So, A, I'm needed daily to keep things running. B, some processes can run without me. Or C, clinic operates smoothly without me while using Jane systems. All right, so I'll give everybody just a minute to tally up their scores. Again, you are going to be choosing 1 point for A, 2 points for B, and 3 points for C. So as everybody's adding those up, I will move on to the scoring key. All right, so adding up your points from all 10 questions, and this is our scoring key to give you an idea of where you are today. So if you scored between 26 and 30, you fall into our bucket of optimized and scalable. So you've built a Jane powered practice, and now it's time to fine tune your systems for strategic growth. If you fell into the 20 to 25 category, you have a solid foundation. So key systems are in place and focus on automation and delegation next. If you fell into our 13 to 19 category, it needs strengthening. So you're doing a lot potentially manually. So start with streamlining, like we discussed earlier, and some SOP development. All righty, we are coming to the end of our presentation, and I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining and re-listening today. I'm so glad to have you here and just be able to share this with you. So as a thank you to our community, we are offering free access to our masterclass series, and this is really special for just the Jane community. So what you'll get after the replay is a link to access that. And it's a 2-hour session of high quality, engaging watch time that you can do at your own pace. So it really is an introduction into the 4 core pillars of mastering practice optimization, a lot of what we discussed today in leveraging Jane to set that foundation for success and allow you to grow. So we go over clinical and administrative workflows, team and leadership dynamics, financial health, and values-based marketing. You'll also get the option to listen to some simple strategies and reflection prompts so that you can move forward with clarity in your practice, all while leveraging Jane. Again, a big thank you to everyone who is here today. Make sure you don't miss our next session of Behind the Practice, where we will have Dr. Josh Wagner as our guest speaker on October 14th. Again, I hope everybody has a wonderful day. It's a pleasure being here with you.